أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. The view from within, an analysis of the self, has been an ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 7. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our amal from last night. May He grant you all your du'as. May He forgive us of our sins and give us those tools to begin a revolution inside of us, inshallah. At the same time, I send my condolences on the day of the shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. May Allah again accept our grief and our gham from last night. And I wanted to actually speak a little bit about last night's program, if it's okay with all of you. And I just wanted to address something that I thought was important, and maybe it's not. And I'm sure that if this is completely out of the blue, then somebody will let me know somehow. There was some discussion with myself and some youth about this idea of a virtual taboot last night. And I had my talks with them, and I just wanted to mention something about that very briefly. And again, it's not my topic. I only have about 35, 40 minutes. There's again Masai today as well, being the day of. So I want to get to my content as well. But before that, it's nowadays, when I attend funerals, and it wasn't like this about, easily a few years back. There's always somebody holding up their phone, their camera phone, and recording the entire thing. And initially I thought to myself, this is a very personal journey of the marhum from this world to the next. And I always felt uncomfortable with somebody taking a picture of the marhum's body, or them wrapped in, or them being buried. But then I thought to myself that, they're relaying it to people in India, Pakistan, or the US, or different cities in Canada, maybe someone who can't even come in the same city, but they're too sick, and they just want to be part of the funeral. And I thought, that's actually very beautiful. It's actually very nice. And I know that some people who weren't able to make it, like, for example, just recently I was at a funeral, and there were some people that I knew that were related to the marhum that were in the US. And they actually messaged me that thank you, Milana, for conducting the funeral rites of my uncle or my family. It felt like we were there with you, in the talqeen and in the salat and in the burial. And they thought to themselves, just because I can't be there with the mayyat or the taboot, at least this is the best way that we can do it. And for the longest time, I would always question the idea of a taboot. I never quite understood it for many, many years. And then kind of, it hit me, and I now realize there's beauty behind it. And it bothers me when some of our youth don't get it. And I don't blame them. Obviously, I'm not mad at them. God forbid. But it bothers me. They are deprived of that beautiful culture. That let's not forget that had we been there in Kufa last night, when Amir al-Mu'mineen had left this world, and had we been given the ijazah and the permission to not just walk with his mayyat, but carry it on our shoulders. There's not a person right now listening to me that would not do that. Imagine carrying the coffin or the mayyat or tabut of your first imam, and being part of that. When someone close to us, when our own father, like my father in Marhum passed away, it's been several years, but the one thing that gets me through this idea and this tragedy is the fact that I was there every step of the way in the ghusl khana. He was my very first ghusl, and burying him and carrying the coffin, let's say, on my I could just say, I could say, what, I was there every step of the way. My heart breaks for those people who lose their mother or their father, and they're on this side of the ocean, and their mom and their father are on that. It's very hard in ghurabat to do that. In Pardes now, it's very difficult. So if we were there in Kufa, we'd be right there beside Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and the ashab carrying the coffin towards the grave in Najaf. So this tabut is just symbolic of that, right? And I just wanted to recognize, first of all, the program directing team and the IT team. You know who you are. You could tell they put forth all of the proper arrangements. They followed the law in Ontario. There's only 5 people in the room. They all had masks on, and they still upheld the beautiful culture of that tabut to say, you know what, even though we're not there in the masjid, at least through my screen, through my device, it felt like I'm walking with the tabut of Amir al-Mu'mineen, symbolically, right? And had the actual mayyat, had I been there with the actual mayyat, then I would have done the exact same thing. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think that it was very well done, and I applaud, and may Allah accept the efforts of all those people who put forth, not only the ones who lifted the tabut, but the various camera individuals. There's a lot of effort being done to bring these programs flawlessly into our homes. May Allah accept your efforts and your gham, and may Allah give us no gham except for the gham of Ali Muhammad, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. We've been talking a little bit about the self, and we've reached a point in our discussions now where we have to identify those elements that are looking to destroy the self. And remember, my example throughout my lectures, and now, 8, 9 nights left, now until the end, is the fact that this self of ours, us, the I inside of me, is a vehicle towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is that wasila, right? It's a transport that I'm supposed to take towards Allah. It is the same vehicle that will carry me forward through this grave, through the barzakh, and onto the day of judgment. So I have to now understand what the I is, what the self is. And on top of that, identify those factors that could destroy the I, and those factors that build the I. And because we're going through a takhliya process, and I defined that 2 nights ago, takhliya is that process in the backyard. First, before you grow your garden or you plant your vegetables, you have to pull all the weeds out, remove those blockages, remove those barriers of growth, and then now plant the seed and watch it grow. Same way, if we want to build towards Allah, fly towards Allah, gravitate and ascend towards Allah, we have to identify the weeds, identify the roadblocks, identify those anchors, and one by one, remove them. Otherwise, it becomes a very frustrating process. You dig the backyard, you grow, you water, you plant, you watch, nothing happens. Why? Well, because the elements weren't there for its growth. Same idea. I'm trying Asad Bhai, I'm trying Malana, I'm trying Sayyid. It doesn't work, forget it, it's not for me. Well, the process was flawed, right? And so in the past 2 nights, we talked about 2 specific weeds inside of us that are stunting our growth towards Allah. One is this negative pessimism inside of us that I can't do it. We begin to suspect Allah and think, maybe He doesn't want to see me succeed spiritually. And last night we talked about Ummul Fasad, the mother of all internal corruption, being the ego. We talked about the ego of the faithful, right? Not the ego of those who deny Allah. These are people who believe in Allah, who worship Allah, who act on Allah, and how Shaitan infiltrates into their acts and allows them now to actually believe that they are somebody. I am somebody because I've done a few mustahab acts in this world. Now, building on top of that, this Ummul Fasad, one thing that is born from the ego is the fact that we now become intolerant towards our own faults, okay? And very much aware of the faults of others. So we go through what's called the Aib Jui in Farsi. We begin to pick the faults of others and find the faults of others and look deeply and spend a lot of energy finding the faults of others. It is a massive problem inside of our families, inside of our communities. Now, let me, first of all, speak about the fact that, yes, in certain areas, in certain relationships, making others aware of the deficiencies and the faults that they have is actually beautiful. And I'll present to you a few hadiths. It's actually recommended, right? So if the person in front of you is listing your faults or making you aware of your deficiencies, then you have to identify, number one, the niyat of the person in front of you. Now, sometimes that can't be done. Sometimes it's very obvious. And secondly, is that we can't group everybody under one roof. For example, we have to kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the people that we love, right? Our spouses, for example, our parents, for example, our siblings, our friends, those people who truly want to see me elevate, is we have to let ourselves know that if they have come to me and said, look, you should begin to work on this, my immediate reaction should not be defensive. Right? Nor should I begin to question their niyat that all they want to do now is destroy me. No, this is your wife, right? It's your husband. This is your parent. This is your mother or your father. This is your best friend. This is your brother or your sister. This is a guy you grew up with, for example. He wants to see you succeed. He wants to see you perfect yourself. Okay? And we can't perfect ourselves unless we identify those imperfections inside of us. It's a very simple and a very logical discussion. Right? So there is one portion of this discussion on the person who's presenting the faults. There's also one person who's receiving that feedback. Okay? We as recipients of the feedback, we have to be a little bit more thick-skinned sometimes. And realize that this person in front of me is not my enemy. This person doesn't want to see me, destroyed. Their purpose is not to embarrass me, God forbid. Their purpose is, look, I see immense potential inside of you. You have all the tools to grow. These are a few things that are really stunting your growth. And me, as your spouse, as your wife, as your husband, as your mother, as your father, who's with you 24 hours a day, I can see things that others can't see. And you should not, at this moment, question my niyat. I'm not, we're on the same page. Right? They say that, a husband and a wife are mirrors of each other. Well, the mirror does what? The mirror shows everything, right? Like this mirror on the wall business that we see in the fairy tales isn't there. That doesn't just, oh, you're the prettiest of them all. No, it's not like that. They'll actually show every scar, every pimple, every, the fact that you haven't had a haircut in 2 months. I really miss my haircut, right? All these things there, it'll show you because that's what a mirror does. Yes, it'll show you that, oh, you trimmed your beard so nicely today, like I did. You see that? It's all lined up very nicely. It'll show you that. At the same time, it'll show you everything. That's how a spouse should be. Now, the hadith says, Imam Ali is a beautiful hadith. Alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. He says that the most beautiful person in your eyes, the most admired person in your eyes is the one that presents your deficiencies to you as a gift. Look, we give, it's such a beautiful Islamic discussion. We give these gifts to people, whatever gift you might give, right? We give the gift with the hope that they might, number one, be happy about it. Number two, they might use it. They might benefit from it. Right? There's nothing better for me, at least, when I get a gift that's useful for me, right? That I can use right away. Oh my God, I was dying for that. This is exactly what I needed. And I'm just so happy I'll start to use it, right? Imam Ali says that sometimes, depending on the person now, sometimes, that person that presents your faults to you as a gift, that means that there is a certain way of presenting the faults. That person should be admired in your eyes. Another hadith says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falls in love with somebody, listen very carefully, please. I'll tell myself, so listen very carefully. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falls in love with somebody, the immediate reaction and the effect of that love is that He makes them aware of their own faults. Why? Because that love is forcing him, that love is making it compulsory on him to make sure that the one that he loves is perfect in everything that they do. Everything that they do. So if my niyat is to perfect the person in front of me, then whatever comes from them has to be looked at as good and khair. Can't be said that, like I want to share your faults with you. I want to do it so I can, I know that you can be a better person, but I'm just too scared. You're just not receptive to it, right? A lot of us, especially me, we're very thin-skinned sometimes, right? And a lot of it comes from where the fact that we can't accept the faults of others or accept the feedback from others is because, we're individuals who are not aware of our own faults. It's a very direct connection, right? Western psychology, Islam as well says that as well. And again, I'll present to you some hadiths tonight that support this claim. The reason why we go around, not only are we not receptive to people who are giving us feedback, but we are able to now easily find the fault in others and not the fault in me, is because I'm oblivious to my faults. Partly because I don't want to face it. Maybe I think I don't have any. It goes back to my ego talk last time. Right? That mother of all corruption gives life to all of these various vices. One of them, of course, being ayib jui in others, looking for faults in others, but not looking for the fault inside of you. Claiming you're perfect, right? Ignorance of your own faults equals to intolerance of the faults of others. Ignorance of your own faults, of my own faults, equals the intolerance of the faults of others. When we begin to understand that, yes, I have these deficiencies, when I see the same deficiencies in other people, I don't laugh, I don't celebrate their weaknesses, I actually empathize with those weaknesses, right? Now, you can ask my siblings. Growing up, I was a very sensitive child. Some claim I still am, but I was a very sensitive child, very sensitive child. I was one of those annoying kids who, had to have, I had to blow out the candle at my cousin's birthday party, If there was I still remember my siblings had their first Rosa Kushai, okay? They had their first, celebration. I wasn't even baligh then, right? So they had just finished their first Rosa Ramadan in our house. We had a little bit of a celebration. Oh, my brother and my sister now began fasting the Ramadan. I was not even baligh. It's not even a wajib on me, but somehow there's pictures of me sitting there holding my pinky, crying in a corner. Why, when will it be that it is my Rosa Kushai? To the point where my family, I just feel embarrassed telling you all this, to the point where my family would have to bring another gift for me, even though it has nothing to do with me, just because I was sensitive. Now, that was back then. Now, but because I'm fully aware now that how hypersensitive I was, and maybe somewhat I still am, when I look at a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-old who's also hypersensitive, I empathize, I sympathize. Because I now am fully aware of the fact that, I was a very caring and loving kid, as they would say. That's a better way of saying it, right? But that's what happens when you become fully aware of the fact. Right? When you are ignorant towards, ghafil, heedless towards your own aib and your own faults, then of course the world is filled with faults, and that's all you see is the faults of others. Right? But the reality is that it's an inside-out process. Because remember, everything I'm saying right now, it's not easy, guys. I mean, building yourself, self-building, khudsazi, looking inward is very, very difficult. Western philosophy, Western psychology says one of the most difficult things any human can practice is introspection, is contemplation, is self-thought. We just don't do it because we're scared to do it. We're scared of what might come out of that process. Right? And because that happens, we just avoid the whole process altogether. It's so much easier, Asabhai, to talk about other people than to talk about me. It's so much easier and sometimes more enjoyable, God forbid, for me to sit there and pick at the faults of others than for me to pick at my own faults. That's not fun. So we don't do it. But not everybody who comes to me presenting my faults to me is the enemy. Imam Ali says the most admired, another hadith by Imam Ali, the closest person to you is one who makes you aware of your faults. Right? The closest enemy of yours, the closest enemy of yours is the one who presents to you as somebody who is perfect and flawless. Right? And what they do in the process is that they fool you to think that, yeah, I am perfect. And then thus the ego process kicks in. Let's be very careful. This is a situation, and this is a fault in us that's destroying families, destroying communities, destroying homes. Not only are we afraid to share the faults with our loved ones, we're also scared to hear those faults as well. And I get it. Sometimes it's the fact that, look, this is the person I love, right? The person that I've spent the rest of my life with, right? I don't want them to see me in that light. I don't like the fact that they're fully aware of my faults. So yeah, when I get upset, it's not upset at you, it's actually upset at myself. That why have I, not only do I have this fault, why was I able now to make the fault apparent to them? Right? So this idea of fault finding is all based on niyat. And your wife, your husband, your parent, your child, fair enough. But a random person in the community comes to you and says, look, brother or sister, this, that, your salat was this way, your hijab is this way. For me, for example, people come to me and give me feedback, good and bad, about the lectures. Next time, this was off. Where'd you get this from? This wasn't good. That story didn't make sense, right? And you really have to sometimes adopt the saying of Imam Ali that don't look at who's saying it, look at what's being said. But if you are somebody who likes to give feedback to others about their faults and about their deficiencies, and you have husn zan, you have the best niyat, and the purest of niyats inside of you. I do it because I love you. I do it because I want to see you better. But my tone is rough. My delivery is off. Right? Let's not just wrap up on with who cares about tone? Worry about what I'm saying. No, it's not like that. Tone sometimes is everything. Right? Up and down the Quran, Allah talks about lahja and tone and tone and tone. Right? Nabi Musa hatta. I've often mentioned this very famous verse, that even God is telling Nabi Musa to go back to Fir'aun, tell him about Allah, but speak to him in a very soft tone. That maybe because of your soft tone, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَخْشَى يَتَذَكَّرُ يَخْشَى, maybe because of that soft tone, maybe he might have khushu or dhikr of me inside of the heart. So yeah, it is how you say it, not always what you say. Right? It's like the example that my father often gives, right? One says no smoking, one says don't you dare smoke, one has a cigarette and a line through it, and one says thank you very much for not smoking. 4 of the exact same messages, different ways of saying it. Okay? But there is a responsibility between the one who receives the feedback, the one who gives the feedback as well. Let's look at a few ahadith I want to share with all of you, inshallah. So sorry, salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. And again, I will tell you, there are some people that have the cruelest of niyats, and I'm sorry, that's a reality. They actually enjoy not only finding the fault, but what? Exposing the fault to others. And meanwhile, the Quran up and down talks about, and Islam talks about what? The protection and of the dignity of the mu'min, right? Al-Kaaba, the hadith says. The hurmat of the mu'min is higher than the Kaaba. And we should do everything we can to what? To protect that dignity. If we believe in a communal religion, if I believe that his izzat or her izzat is ultimately my izzat and my respect, because we belong to the same deen and same ummah and same nation. Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, he says, again, these are very profound ahadith, and ones that, I want all of, especially me, to ponder. He says, "Kafa bil mara'i ayban." It's enough of an ayb. It's enough of a fault, of a deficiency. It's enough for you. It's enough for me to say this one fault is enough for me. I don't need 1,000 faults. This one fault is what is that fault? He says, "An yubsira min an-nasi man ya'ma anhu min nafsihi." That he tries and he picks and he looks for faults in others, those faults that actually he's blind to within himself. Meaning, sometimes you find people that they talk about person A and person B, she does this and he does that. And meanwhile, that person does that all day long. And you're looking at this person saying, are you serious right now? Do you know you're describing yourself right now? But the Quran says what? The Hadith says what? Man ya'ama, they're blind to their own faults. So same faults that exist inside of them, they're out there picking the faults of those others. That is enough of a deficiency, Imam Muhammad Baqir says. What more do you want? That's one hadith. The second hadith, from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wa salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. He says, Man bahatha an ayub al-nas falyabda'u bi nafsihi. The person who busies himself looking into the faults of others. And there are some people who legitimately busy themselves all day long. You have nothing better to do than to snoop around, ask around, do some jasusi, do some spying, right? We talked about suspicion 2 nights ago, right? Su'edan. We talked about Surah Hujurat. Surah Hujurat in verse number 11, I believe, talks about the fact that do not be individuals who suspect each other, right? There are certain levels of suspicion that are outright sin. Because that suspicion leads to what? Leads to jasusi, that you just end up asking, not spying inside someone's house, but spying into their lives, meaning that, you find out, okay, what happened over there? Tell me. Oh, okay. And then you compare stories and you come up with, and then you begin the backbiting process. Or I begin the backbiting process. All begins from the idea that we become obsessed with the lives of others. Why? What is the obsession with how other people live their life, how other people present themselves? Right? This person is, oh, look at her, look at him, he's everywhere, just sit down, why? Just worry about yourself. Like I said, sometimes when I go see some married couples, right? Sometimes they ask, can you just come by and kind of help us out and, maybe listen to us and give some advice? Sure. So I go and, it's amazing how, and I think to an extent it's human nature. We become defensive, right? It's amazing how one spouse has all this advice for the other spouse, and that spouse has all the advice for this spouse. But when I asked him, what are you gonna do to fix this marriage? There's crickets. It's silence. Either you think that I don't need to do anything, I've done everything. What more can I, or you don't know where to start, or you've never been asked that question. Or if I ask people, and I tend to do that, I go, what will your husband tell me about you? Or what will your wife tell me about you? Well, he might say this or she might say this. He says the one who busies himself looking into the faults of others should what? Should start by looking into the faults of his own self. This is a communal movement. It takes a village for us to fix ourselves. Right? And we have to stop looking outward and begin to fix the inside. And we need help in doing that. The Prophet says that the worst person to consult with when you're trying to build yourself and rid yourself of any deficiencies is yourself. Profound statement. Why? Because, either we are too hard on ourselves, where I am useless, I'm worthless, I'm hellbound, or we're way too lax on ourselves. That I'm Mr. Muttaqi, I'm everything, I'm better than 1,000 people. For sure, there's jannats for me waiting for me. And this is why, sometimes you see in the discussion on Ma'ad and the Day of Judgment, sometimes you see, this idea that one of the proofs that we have against it for the Day of Judgment is that there is a mini Day of Judgment inside of us. There's a judge, there's a jury, there's an executioner inside of us. Think about this nafsil lawama that we have, this regretful, remorseful soul that we have, right? We commit a sin against Allah, and we, before anyone else does, we feel immense regret, and we end up punishing ourselves. Why'd you do that? Why are you so weak? Why can't you be better? Right? The judge has already laid down the sentence. The jury has already found you guilty, and you are also the defendants. So you're all in one. That's a little bit of a qiyamat sughra inside of you, a little small Day of Judgment. The problem with that is that it is not based on justice. It's based on what we believe to be our version of justice for our own self. So either it's the fact that we make a mistake and we beat ourselves up over it, that I'm zero, I'm worthless, I can't even pray salat, what's the point? Or to the point where I justify that mistake, saying, oh, come on, everyone does it, not a big deal. People do 1,000 things worse than I. That's one thing I've done a long time. Either one is wrong, right? So we need that actual Day of Judgment to truly, based on God's adalat, to truly go ahead administer whatever justice that needs to be administered. My point is that we need outside factors to help us grow on the inside. Don't push people. I'm not talking to myself here, as I always say. I'm the first one. Don't push those people away from you that really, truly are looking to help you. If you can, look beyond their tone. Maybe they don't have the lovey-dovey words that you're looking for. Wrap it in a nice bow, this and that. You ever see? Sometimes the wrapping is worth more than the actual gift is inside. Right. So sometimes people like me are just stuck on the wrapping. Look, tear open the wrapping. What's inside the box is more important. I'm like, no. Where's my bow? Where's the way you wrapped it? It's okay. This person inside is the actual matlab and the content. That's where we have to truly focus on. And thank that person. Imam Ali says that they're presenting a gift to you by telling you your faults. How many of us can bardash that? One person beside me in Jamaat says, I don't know if your sajda was, who are you talking about sajda? I've been doing sajda for many years. Myself, Baba, I'm just telling you as a brother of yours that maybe you can try to flatten your palm during sujood. I know my sajda. Don't worry about it. It's like, okay. Okay, right. So we're not quite ready to accept that, but it's a communal movement towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One more hadith and then Masa'ib, inshallah. This is very, very important. And it goes back to, remember I talked about that 2 nights ago, that the hadith says that the individual who is ahle rayb, who's constantly in doubt, constantly suspicious, always negative, if you spend your time around people like that, fahuwa murib, the hadith says, you become like that. You become like that. You just become suspicious and negative. Always, everyone is zid salad. Everyone is under question. This hadith also says the exact same thing, but in a different way. Again, Imam Ali, alayhi salatu wasalam, we are blessed with his words on the day of his Shahadat. May Allah allow us to apply these words in our life. He says, Iyakum wa ma'ashira. He goes, I warn you about keeping relations with who? Mutadabbi'i uyub an-nas, about people who constantly look for the faults in others. Why? He says, فَإِنَّهُ لَمْ يَسْلَمْ مُصَاحِبَهُمْ مِنْهُم, because you yourself will not be spared by them. Allahu Akbar. You won't be spared by them. And another related tradition, he says, the one who talks to you about others will talk about you to others, Imam Ali says. Same idea. The one who constantly finds faults in others and shares that with you, the tus inside your ear during the majlis. Now, person's in your ear, trying to move up in your ear, oh, look what she's wearing, look what he's wearing, oh, look who showed up, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, I can't believe, did you hear about his house and his kids and that divorce? And then you think for a second that they're not going to turn around and talk about you. No, Imam says yes, they are. Absolutely. Absolutely they are. He warns us for that. Let's be very careful. Let's not surround ourselves. Goes back to what I always talk about is avoiding a toxic circle of influence. My youth out there, my young guys out there, pick and choose your boys properly. Pick and choose your sisters properly. Surround yourself with the right people. I don't care if it's 5 people, 10 people, 1 person. Do not be those individuals who surround themselves with people that when you're with them, the shaitan comes out inside of you. A perfectly good mu'min, a sister in front of you, now has become somebody that you know every fault of theirs. A perfectly good brother that you thought was a good mu'min brother, a great guy, he's such a good-hearted guy, I said, you sat with a couple of guys and now you know everything about his life. And now no longer is he this pious, soft-hearted individual. Let's be careful. Let's understand that those individuals who do bring our faults to us and have the right niyat, and like I said, loved ones around us, accept that as their way of helping us, perfecting us. They see things in such that maybe we are blind to see for ourselves. May Allah protect us and may Allah guide us on this path to first of all examine the faults inside of me and then work to, inshallah, build that and correct it. Just a few lines of musibah, as today is the day of the shahadat of the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is the day that I always recall one story that always breaks my heart. Imam Ali now has been buried in Najaf. His ghusl was taken care of. And it was carried out the exact way that he had told Imam Mushtaba, you carry the body from the back, the angels will carry it from the front, and you'll go until you reach, a place where the angels will lay down my body, remove the dirt, and there you'll see a grave. I mentioned in the Amal last night that one of the groups that were affected by the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen were the orphans, the widows, the faqirs, the miskeens, those who were less fortunate inside of Kufa. These were people that Imam Ali would frequently visit, to the point where our books say that after the first day of the day of the Zarbat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that night when he wasn't able to leave his house, that day the orphans would say that, he hasn't come yet. Where is he? Maybe he forgot about us. Maybe he got tired of us. I mean, they would sit there and count down the days, count down the hours, that he's coming now, he's coming now, he's coming now. 1 day passes, 2 days passes, 3 nights have passed now, and this one blind faqir, a story I tell every single year, one blind faqir has been waiting for 3 nights. When is my Habib coming? When is my friend coming? When is that man who is coming, who makes me forget about my situation? Imam Mujtaba is on his way back from burying his father. He hears the sound of crying, and there was crying everywhere, but this was a certain sound of crying coming from a blind man's house. Imam Mujtaba enters the house and asks this man, "Are you okay? Is it something that you need?" He says, "He hasn't been here for 3 nights. He hasn't been here for 3 nights." Imam Mujtaba says, Who are you talking about?" He says, "I don't know who he was. I just knew his smell. I knew the way that he used to walk. I could tell when he entered a room, he didn't have to say a single word. It was him. He had the way of talking, the way of speaking. He would sit beside me. We would break some bread. We would talk. And for the brief time that he was with me, I would forget about all of my pain. But he never once told me who he was. Never once announced his name. I would ask him, "Tell me who your name is. Tell me about your family. Tell me where you're from." He said, "It's not important. Just know that I am faqir like you're faqir. I am gharib in this world like you are gharib in this world. If you are lonely in this world, then I am also lonely in this world. Let's be lonely together. I'm here to accompany you, give you company. Don't worry about all these things." Because he knew that the moment that this man found out that this is Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Khalifa of the time, that he wouldn't allow him to sit with him. He goes, "Look, let me sit with you. I also am enjoying our time together." Imam Mujtaba, now hearing the story, he begins to cry. He says, "Hey, faqir, this is my father you're referring to. We just buried him. He was hit with the poisonous sword." This man now falls on the ground, begins to cry. He goes, "Can you please take me to the grave?" Imam Mujtaba holds this man's hand, takes him to the fresh grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He collapses on the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen, picks up the khag and says, "Mawla, please accept my apology. I had no idea that it was you. I wouldn't have the jur'at or the audacity to sit there and say the things I said to you." And he began to cry and began to cry. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. فاطمة حسين.